Well, good evening, everyone. That was a short intro there, but we'll take it as it is. I'd like to call the meeting to order. May I have the roll call, please?
Fred Austin,
Present?
Michael Best,
Present.
Lisa Ellison. Here. Thompson Forbes. Sharon Gray.
Present.
Lyman Hardy.
Present.
Steve Little.
Here.
Charles McLaughlin.
Here.
Michael White.
Present.
Mr. Chairman, we received notice that Rita Jackson Gilbert and Miss Minnie Johnson Stewart would not be present tonight.
All righty, thank you so much. Now's the time for our prayer and pledge of allegiance. So for lead, Mr. Little.
Please, Rob.
Blessing.
Let us bow. Our Father and our God, we thank you, Lord, for the blessings of life that you richly bestow upon us. We thank you for just where we are in our county, in our state, in our local communities, Lord. We just appreciate each one of those blessings. Father, we pray right now as we come into this meeting that all things that might be said and done might be pleasing in your sight. And it's all in the name of Jesus that we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Please face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, gentlemen. Now is time for approval of the minutes of the last meeting. Has the board had time to review said minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
Chairman, I move the approval of the minutes.
Second the motion.
Thank you. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Thank you very much. Minutes are approved. And now is the time when I'd like to open the floor to public addresses to the board. This is just general address and comments made by anybody that would like to make. We will have time to do the other comments and speaking about specific matters shortly after. I don't see anybody, so thank you. I'd like to close the public addresses to the board. I do want to make a comment to everybody here. The board is very sincere in its existence, and we've tried to be as fair and equitable to all those people involved, and we think of Pitt County and what's best for Pitt County as a whole. So I appreciate all being here, and also when you're speaking, you have a 3-minute limit, and please, if you adhere to that, that would be very much appreciated. There's a good chance that the board may ask questions beyond that 3 minutes, but please, if you'd adhere to that, we'd appreciate that. Thank you very much. So now I think we'll move into our planning matters. Mr. Jonas.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. Thank you all for being here tonight. The first item on the agenda is a zoning ordinance text amendment request made by ARC Consulting to amend the Pitt County zoning ordinance to create a conservation area overlay district. The purpose of this is to establish a mechanism to provide permanent open space and desirable buffers between proposed uses and incompatible adjacent land uses, environmentally sensitive areas and or hazardous areas in excess of the minimum standards. For consistency purposes, the proposed language is modeled after the City of Greenville's zoning ordinance, and they have a conservation area overlay district as well. That district shall include any areas adopted as a CA overlay district in conjunction with the underlying conventional zoning district. So this is an overlay of the conventional zoning district. All zoning rights, standards, and restrictions and requirements set forth for the conventional or conditional zoning district shall extend to the conservation area overlay district area of the lot of record. The proposed language prohibits encroachments of buildings, structures, parking areas, drives, or other impervious areas, or other residential or non-residential uses or activities which can include storage, stock and trade display, and delivery service within the overlay district on the zone portion of the lot. The initiation of the petition for the Conservation Area Overlay District zoning map amendment is restricted to the legal owner of record, both at the time of the application and the commissioner's final decision. Or they can designate it and authorize the agent to handle that. At the time of the zoning consideration of any conservation area overlay district, the area within the proposed district shall be undeveloped, vacant, and shall not contain any principal or accessory buildings, structures, parking, or be subject to any vested rights. So the area that they propose for this conservation area overlay has to be clear of any structures or anything that could be vested in the future. So no conservation area overlay district zoned area of any lot at either at the time of the initial zoning or as a result of future zoning action or subdivision of the property shall that area be less than 100 feet. So the minimum width for this conservation area overlay is 100 feet. Public streets, sidewalks, public utilities, and other public infrastructure improvements and or structures are allowed within the CA overlay district. So public rights-of-ways will be allowed. They can put a street through this area, as well as stormwater detention ponds and drainage improvements. They can be constructed in this conservation area overlay district. Private streets, sidewalks, and driveways and general pedestrian access walkways may encroach into this overlay district as long as they meet development standards. And the primary standard is that those private streets connect to a public dedicated street or sidewalk or the like. No temporary or permanent parking areas or spaces shall be allowed within this district. And also, the overlay district may be utilized to satisfy any required roadside and or property line buffer yard requirements that the zoning ordinance may necessitate, as long as it's in compliance there. When a property containing any area under this overlay district is proposed to be subdivided, the preliminary subdivision plat and final plat shall delineate this overlay district area as conservation area and shall note any restrictions applicable to that area. Areas that are indicated on the final plat as conservation area shall not constitute a public dedication of lands except for when it's specifically noted in the description. Areas can be reconfigured pursuant to a zoning amendment of that overlay district boundary affecting the lot as long as it's approved by the commissioners. And the language is included in your packet there. The schedule for this amendment is tonight. We're here at the planning board meeting. This item will go forward to the commissioners on the July 21st meeting for approval or consideration of approval. Planning staff finds that the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance is consistent with the envisioned Pitt County 2045 Comprehensive Land Use Plan because the policy LU4 of the plan recommends updating our zoning ordinance to reduce and mitigate impacts from new development on existing residences and requires transitional features such as buffers, tree plantings, etc. When new development occurs next to neighborhoods. Staff also finds that the proposed amendments are reasonable and in the public's best interest because this overlay district can be utilized to provide permanent open space and buffering between proposed uses and incompatible adjacent uses, and also in environmentally sensitive areas or hazardous areas, in excess of what the zoning ordinance calls for. So therefore, Pitt County Planning staff recommends the approval to amend the Pitt County zoning ordinance as proposed to create a conservation area overlay district with an immediate effective date following the commissioner's vote. So at this time, Mr. Chairman, I will answer any questions you may have or the board, but we can open it up for public comment as well.
Mr. Chairman, may I ask Jonas a question?
Yes, you may.
So this is to be on an ad hoc basis, and the individual applicant, as we go along, as we approve or disapprove projects,
Yes,
they will be proposing the construction overlay, right? I mean,
correct.
the conservation overlay.
Correct.
So,
So this would accompany either a traditional rezoning request or a conditional rezoning
Right,
request.
but there are no requirements endemic to this. It's just in the mind of the applicant to create it. I understand.
Correct.
I think that's a very good idea, Mr. Chairman, and I.
Thank you for your comments. Any other board members like to comment or question?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious too, the timing of this happening now. It seems like why isn't it coming for us before?
So
Unless it-
this request is a text amendment from ARC Consulting Group that has requested this text amendment. They did it along with the rezoning request that they have coming before them. It was something that we talked about, staff with ARC Consulting, and they realized that we did not have this in our zoning ordinance. They had worked on other projects with the city of Greenville and found it to be very beneficial in those cases. So they approached staff about making a text amendment and requested this amendment.
So being the depth of the study, that could happen, just how far does it go and what would it enhance, what would it help? How would it help?
As Mr. McLaughlin said, this buffering area is just another tool in our toolbox to provide buffering between a new use and an existing use, and they may want some additional buffering between the two. For example, at last month's meeting, we had a conditional use rezoning for mini storage on Worthington Road. I'm sure y'all remember that. There was a buffered area between the storage buildings and the adjacent subdivision. However, there was no district or overlay that would protect that vegetated area. This would formally protect that area as part of the zoning, rezoning request.
Okay.
I think to add on to that a little bit, we've had in the past where developers have said, we'll create this buffer, X so feet and contains shrubs and trees and whatever. But it's always, we'd never really been able to enforce that, right? It was just their promise. This overlay allows us to, any of the changes in zonings that we create, allows us to put some teeth into it and really enforce the buffer. Do we have any public comments?
Mr. Chairman, if I could we formally open the public hearing before you ask for comments?
I'd like to open the opportunity for public opinions and questions.
May I have a question first?
Yes, you may.
So correct me if I'm mistaken about this. For a conditional use that has lapsed and has the conservation area overlay, that conservation area overlay goes away when the conditional use
Correct.
does?
If it was a conditional use, yes, that overlay would go away as well.
Thank you.
If no action was taken, yeah.
And back to open the public comments. I see that we have one gentleman coming up forward.
Good evening.
Please state your name and your address, please.
Sure. My name is Scott Anderson, 925A Conference Drive, Greenville, North Carolina. I am one of the owners of ARC Consulting Group. So we are the ones that made this request to you. So again, as Jonas said, we have used this conservation overlay successfully in Greenville and several other municipalities. And it's something that we feel like, as you mentioned, gives some teeth to the zoning, that we can protect environmentally sensitive areas, as well as provide some buffers between adjacent property owners. It's something that is more than just a promise. It is something that is put on a map that everybody knows is there and it's enforceable. So for those reasons, we think this is a good idea, and as Jonas says, it gives us another tool in our toolbox. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Does the board have any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move the adoption of the ordinance, the text amendment to allow for the conservation overlay district as described in our materials in this voluminous text.
Second that.
Mr. Chairman, if I could get you to close the
We
public
got,
hearing.
we do, sorry. Formalities. I'd like to now close the public comment period for this issue, and I think if you.
So I renew I make my motion for the first time to adopt this conservation overlay district as described in the text amendment, as described in the materials that were provided to us.
I second that.
All righty. We have a motion and it has been made to approve this text overlay, text amendment to our zoning ordinance. And it's been seconded. Board, may I have a vote of yay if you raise your right hand, please? Nays, raise your left. Thank you. Mr. Rogers, I believe you're on deck.
Yes, sir. Good evening, Chairman and board members. We do have a couple of rezoning requests this evening. The first one has been submitted by Mr. Calvin Overcash, and the request is to rezone 5 acres of his property. It's parcel number 23108 and is located on both sides of Edwards Farm Road, east of NC 43 South, and the request is to go from rural residential to general commercial. General vicinity map of the property, again, it's down 43 south of Greenville and then just east of the town of Winterville, again, just off of 43 south. Some pictures of the area. Again, it's 2 separate sections off of 43 south and Edwards Farm Road. It's going to be 2.5 acres on either side is the proposal. So this is the northern side of Edwards Farm Road. And this is the southern side of Edwards Farm Road. This is looking back north on 43 towards the city of Greenville. And then looking back south and looking west down Edwards Farm Road. Some pictures of the adjacent properties. This is actually part of the same parcel. It goes across NC 43 South. You see that's just undeveloped. And there is a residence across from the southern side of the proposed area. And the same parcel that's being requested, like I said, it's all one large parcel. It kind of wraps around this residence as well, which we'll see in just a second. There are some general commercial and non-residential uses in the area. Just north of the property on 43 South, there's a couple of general contractors. This is G&J Contractors, and then this is Top Quality Maintenance, both right off of 43 South. And then just south of the property, there's kind of a commercial park that has several different commercial uses. There's an automotive repair business, 360 golf carts right along 43 South. Kind of interior of this complex, a couple other commercial uses, basically office or storage yards for specific uses. And there's also Top Dog Academy dog training facility right off of 43 South. So to give you an idea of the existing land uses in the area, you see the 2 squares there highlighting the proposed rezoning areas. Again, it's 2.5 acres on either side of Edwards Farm Road. A lot of agricultural and undeveloped property. You do see a few residential properties, especially the one directly across the street. In red to the north are those 2 general contractors, and to the south is that commercial park. There's also to the east a landscape and business on Page Road. The NC 43 South Land Use Plan does designate this area as rural residential and agricultural. And this area is characterized by working farms, larger homesteads, and their associated public and institutional uses, as well as low-density, single-family residential lots. Access to sewer service is generally unavailable, and development must utilize on-site septic treatments. Although more dense than the agricultural character area, residential densities may approach 1 or 2 units per acre, and actual lot size will vary based on the quality of soils. When possible, preservation of environmental features should be prioritized, and small-scale, non-residential land uses that have frontage and access along NC 43 South may be allowed on a case-by-case basis in the conditional zoning district. The current zoning map, you see the majority of the area is rural residential, and then further south getting into the RA, rural agricultural, outside of those red areas which are currently zoned general commercial that we kind of touched on. Again, the proposed rezoning or the proposed zoning district is the general commercial district, and this is intended to accommodate a range of retail, service, office, limited wholesale, and moderate density multifamily residential uses in areas that have access to major thoroughfares and the necessary utilities to support such development. County planning staff does find that this request is consistent with the NC 43 South Corridor Land Use Plan. The area requested for rezoning is in general conformance with the NC 43 South Corridor Land Use Plan and is located at an intersection with direct access to NC 43 South. Additionally, the area proposed for rezoning is located within close proximity to several other non-residential land uses within the vicinity, including 2 general contractors and several commercial uses located off of Wilson Farm Lane. Again, the automobile repair service, golf cart sales, dog training facility. The property is also located near D.H. Conley High School and the Pitt County Soccer Association Soccerplex. Staff does find this request is reasonable and in the public interest because there are limited residential land uses in the immediate area. In addition, there are several non-residential land uses along NC 43 South within close proximity to the subject property, and future non-residential development will require site plan approval by planning staff. Again, staff does recommend approval of the request. Public comments will now be entertained by the board, and the planning board will make a recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners, who are scheduled to hold a public hearing on July 21st. And I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to go ahead and open for public comments, Chairman, whatever you desire.
All righty, thank you very much. Does the board have any questions?
Yes, go ahead.
There are limited residential land uses in the immediate area. Is that as a result of the access to sewer services that you mentioned earlier?
I don't think so. Everything outside the city of Greenville's jurisdiction is going to be on septic out in the county. So that's just kind of a general rule. I mean, we get those questions all day asking if properties are on sewer or septic, and that's our answer. The city of Greenville typically requires a voluntary annexation before GUC will allow them to tap onto their sewer system. So pretty much anything out in the county's jurisdiction is going to be on septic either way.
What about public water? Is there public water to the site?
Yes, sir. Eastern Pines, I believe, is the water provider out there.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Ben, at what point do you think we should be concerned as a planning board about the number of driveway cuts on Highway 43?
And that's one of our questions internally, if and when we get a site plan. So since this is not a conditional district, we don't know what the use is going to be. They're just doing it for speculative purposes to see if they can find a buyer.
Right.
Part of that review will be site plan review with DOT. We haven't talked with them since they don't usually provide much feedback if there's not a specific use on the property. But we've had those same questions internally. Are they going to allow access on 43? Are they going to require a turn lane? If they do, will they require access from Edwards Farm Road? So that's something that they are very closely looking at when they get a site plan. And
Okay.
we've been told, even with subdivisions and just road front lots, just the number of them, they don't particularly like just seeing them on top of each other, whether it be commercial or just 5 houses beside each other. So
Exactly, and that's the reason for my question.
sir.
I'm glad you considered that, but when you do the site plan review, it's possible that the DOT might not allow them what they think they're going to get.
absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and I think that's part of it when you look at these rezonings, it just trying to get a rezoning for speculative purposes versus we know what we want to do. We're going to have a site plan up front, so we kind of know those answers before we go too far into it. I think it's an advantage of doing those conditional districts.
Right.
But I think that's an excellent point and something we have discussed internally.
Right, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, board. I'd like now to open it up to public comments. I do have a speaker request. Jeannie Everett, please, if you may come up. And once, if you'll come to the podium, and please state your name and your address where you live.
Hi, my name's Jeannie Everett. I live at 5432 NC Highway 43 South, and I am a field away from the proposed site. I am not in favor of it. I do have two businesses, one in front of me and one beside me. They operate from, say, 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock, which is a reasonable time. However, if this goes through, there's a possibility it could be a gas station, which brings a lot of traffic. It also brings a lot of noise to our area. We have a lot of accidents coming out on the road off of Page, which is right close adjacent to Edwards Farm. And they're very deadly accidents from where people are gunning it and not paying attention and turning out onto the highway quickly. I'm not opposed to businesses. Like I said, my two neighbors are very nice gentlemen who run very good businesses. But I am concerned that if a gas station goes in that area, it will bring noise and it will bring theft, and then all the traffic on top of it. It's already a busy area with the high school, the soccer field, and just general traffic going out of town and into town. So those are some of my concerns that I present to you guys.
Thank you, Ms. Everett. Does the board have any questions of Ms. Everett?
Mr. Chairman, I'm just curious, Ms. Everett, what makes you think it may be a gas station? Because from what I've heard,
Rumor mills float around, but I mean, it is an area right outside of town. It's a fairly large-sized property that he could add to if they wanted. So, you know, there is that opportunity that's there. If it's a regular business that's 9 to 5, you know, we are not as opposed to that in talking to my neighbors. But we're concerned. You know, we like quiet homes just like you guys do when you go home.
and I do understand the concern, but I guess where I'm coming from is because as far as we've heard or know, it's just right now the fact that
Right.
they'd like the rezoning to be able to put a better product on the market for
Right.
sale, okay?
Right.
Is that right, man?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I want to ask Mr. Ron, isn't it true that that would require another layer of approval to have a gas station there?
So if this was approved this evening, gas stations would be a permitted use in the
Oh, it
general
would be
commercial.
permitted use, okay.
Of course, it would have to have site plan approval by staff, which again, reviewed by DOT, environmental health staff, you know, other internal planning staff. So at that point, it's just a staff level review, but if it's approved, that use of uses that is in your packet under general commercial, it would be approved and would not have to come back before this board.
Thank you, Ms. Everett, for your comments. Do I have anybody else that has not pre-signed up? Thank you. I'd like to close the public comments for this particular item. Board, any further questions or discussion? No further discussion. Do we have a motion
I'll ask a question.
already?
About the recommendation, so it is not in line with what the future land use map indicates, but because of a couple of nearby properties, that's the reason for the recommendation?
So our recommendation, let me pull it, we did use that terminology kind of specifically, that general conformance, and we always like to remember that that land use plan is a guiding document. You know, I think this board probably remembers, most of you that were on it, kind of served as the focus group. We try to identify areas on the land use plan that may see future growth, and kind of had those nodes along 43 South. Obviously couldn't pick all of them and didn't want to have a full corridor of commercial. With that being said, the direct access to NC 43 South, the fact that it's at an intersection, those are two of the main things that we feel like it's in, again, general conformance with the plan, even though it's not within one of those commercial nodes, in addition to the other commercial uses in the area. So being at that intersection and having direct access to NC 43 South, staff feels comfortable with that, kind of making that favorable recommendation with the land use plan.
Could we see that map again?
Yes.
Thank you.
The actual 43 South corridor. So you see just south, so some of those vacant properties, excuse me, that are kind of in the pink, those are rural commercial, and those would be more areas that were identified that time. There was already commercial right there at that little commercial corporate park. This being a little bit north outside of it, you know, it's not within that node, But again, those two main things, the location with the direct access and being at an intersection, were kind of what we feel comfortable with out there. And the initial request was going to be for a larger area. Staff advised the applicant that we probably wouldn't recommend anything over 5 acres total, 2.5 on each side at this time, without them knowing what was going out there. If it was conditional where we knew what was going and maybe we can put some more conditions on it, then maybe we would support something larger, but just being that they're just trying to see what they can get, I think is what it comes down to. Staff was more comfortable with about 2.5 acres on each side of that road.
I got a question
Yes.
for you, please. Isn't there a service station less than a half a mile from this site?
Yes, sir.
What makes y'all think that there's gonna be a service station built out there? It's in
Rumor
the
mill
country.
passes around, just concerns. We want to be proactive on our area.
Okay,
Anything's possible.
oh yeah, thank you.
And if I could just point out, keep in mind, this is not a conditional use rezoning, so we're not aware of what may go there. So what we have to look at as a board is all the potential uses that are allowed in the commercial zoning district. And we have to take into account, is this an appropriate area for commercial activity, whatever that might be? So just keep that in your mind as you're debating and taking the vote.
Yes, ma'am.
I move to recommend denial of the proposed rezoning request from Calvin Overcash and find it is not consistent with the NC 43 South Corridor Land Use Plan and is not reasonable because the request is not compatible with similar uses in the surrounding area and is an area that is not appropriate for the proposed type of development.
I second that, Mr. Chairman.
So we have a motion, we've received a motion to deny the rezoning request, and it has been seconded. Any discussion from the board on the motion? I have no discussion, so I may ask the board for a vote. For a yay to the denial, please raise your right hand. All those in nay of the denial of the rezoning, please raise your left hand. So the motion carries to deny the rezoning.
Yes, sir. And Chairman, the motion did cover our consistency statement as well, so thank you for that, and I think we will have what staff needs. All right.
Okay?
Yes.
Just want to advise the members of the public that this is a recommendation that will go to the commissioners' meeting at the July 21st meeting, and they will have the ultimate vote. So didn't want you to think this was the end of the road for it. So we will send out notifications to the adjacent property owners as well as post the public hearing notice in the paper advising of that meeting as well. So I will take that recommendation to the commissioners, and they will vote on it at the July meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to move on to the next item on our agenda, the Weyerhaeuser Company rezoning request.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The next request on your agenda is a request by the Weyerhaeuser Company to rezone 3,319.59 acres of 9 parcels located on both sides of State Road 1416, which is Saintsville Road, west of its intersection with State Road 1424, Alpine Taylor Road, and along the northern side of State Road 1415, Briley Road. East of its intersection was Saintsville Road in the Belvoir and Carolina Townships. From rural agricultural to general industrial, and establish a conservation overlay district. So that's what you heard the text amendment on earlier. The request also includes an amendment to the Envision Pitt County 2045 Comprehensive Land Use Plan to designate the property as employment industrial. Per North Carolina General Statute 160D 605, it states that land use plan amendments and zoning amendments may be considered concurrently. So that is what we're going to take you through that process tonight. Just to provide a little bit of background information to you, Pitt County, the City of Greenville, Greenville Utilities Commission, Greenville ENC Alliance, Weyerhaeuser, and other economic development partners have collaborated to develop the subject property as a mega site. You might remember last month we had Josh Lewis come and speak before you guys to give you some of the history as to how we got to this point. Just to refresh your memory, the mega site is a parcel of land that consists of 1,000 acres or more that is considered viable for large-scale industrial development. The Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina has identified the site as one of 7 potential mega sites throughout the state of North Carolina. The North Carolina General Assembly has appropriated funding for mega site readiness programs that allows local governments to partner with agencies to plan and install public infrastructure for such sites. The proposed rezoning is required in order to access approximately $10 million in state grant funding for site due diligence and $97.8 million for site development. Upon approval of the request, Pitt County and the Greenville ENC Alliance will negotiate an option to purchase the property and submit a grant application to EDPNC for funding. The subject property has several characteristics which makes it attractive for development, including large acreage under single ownership, that being the Weyerhaeuser Company, access to a 4-lane road interstate, access to utilities, being water, sewer, natural gas, electric, and telecom services, as well as its proximity to a regional airport, being Pitt Greenville Airport. Kind of a timeline as to how we've gotten to this point. March 11th of this year, there was a joint meeting between the Pitt County Board of Commissioners and the City Council at Welcome Middle School. Following that meeting, we had public outreach efforts held on March 31st at the Ag Center, April 3rd at Aiden Middle School, April 8th at Welcome Middle School, and then there was a virtual session held on April 17th. We also had a website available where individuals who are interested could visit to learn more about this site. On April 17th, the Greenville Utilities Board of Commissioners approved the resolution authorizing the provision of sewer to the site. On May the 5th, the Greenville City Council authorized GUC to extend the sewer without requiring a petition for voluntary annexation. And you might remember Ben just answered a question regarding sewer. It has long been a policy that annexation is required by the city of Greenville to get sewer. They have waived it in this instance. So we're here tonight for consideration for a recommendation to the commissioners by the planning board for this request, and that will be heard at the July 21st Board of Commissioners meeting. To orient you guys a little bit regarding the site location, the map before you shows the general location. It's generally located between NC 11 and NC 33 East or 33 West, just adjacent to Briley Road with Saintsville Road moving through the center. The existing land use is agricultural undeveloped in the area. You can see on your map before you now, there are some residential areas in proximity to this area. Those are shown in the gold color on your map. But primarily it is very agricultural based, open space in nature. Couple of pictures for those of you who couldn't attend the field trip that we took out there. This is going down Briley Road. This is the property adjacent on the left-hand side of the picture, showing the Weyerhaeuser property that abuts Briley Road. continuing down Briley Road. And this is at the intersection of Briley and Saintsville, looking back towards the majority of the area to be rezoned. This is proceeding down Saintsville Road, looking towards the west. Again, further up Saintsville Road, and you'll notice it's in timber production, so the majority of the property is currently vegetated with timber or trees. This is an area that has been timbered, that is laying there. And again, on the other side of the road, some younger trees that have been planted there for timber production. There are some areas of open space, agricultural fields as you proceed down Saintsville Road, but again, the majority of it is wooded area. There are some residents that I spoke about on the existing land use map, showing some of these residences here along Briley Road, as well as the church at the end of Saintsville Road and Briley Road. And this is looking west down Briley Road from Saintsville Road. And another picture of the church there. The Vision Pitt County 2045 future land use map shows that the majority of the property per this request is open space, or I'm sorry, agricultural, shown in the darker green. If you'll look towards the bottom of the dotted black outline, you'll see there is a small portion along Briley Road that is rural residential there. The agricultural designation includes prime farmlands that are vital to the production within the county. Activities include agricultural, forestry, limited low-density residential, and commercial or institutional uses. These areas are located near agricultural lands and the surrounding areas. The uses are agriculture, agribusiness, forestry, limited commercial, single-family properties, and the occasional low-density, small-scale residential subdivisions. Utility access is typically served by a septic tank. However, there may be limited sewer availability in some areas. The density in this area is generally less than one dwelling unit per acre based on gross density. This designation for rural residential applies to transitional areas between or areas that include a mix of low-density suburban development and agricultural lands. New development should have relatively large lots or be clustered away from sensitive areas and/or working agricultural operations. These areas can be found with existing single-family homes, low-density subdivisions surrounded by agricultural activity. Uses are low-density residential, agricultural, agribusiness, some isolated non-residential uses along the major roads or near key intersections. Again, typically septic systems are relied upon for waste disposal. However, sewer may be limited in some areas. Density is generally less than 1 to 2 dwelling units per acre. Gross density, individual lots may be smaller. So the proposed future land use designation is employment industrial. Again, this designation contains a mix of office, industrial, and institutional uses. May also include a variety of supporting heavy and light commercial uses. Surrounding residential uses should be spatially separated from high-intensity commercial and industrial uses where noise, odors, or other negative effects could be expected. These areas are designated as employment industrial on future land use maps or other prime industrial lands. Light to heavy industrial and commercial or office and industrial related uses are allowed. Utility access is typically served by community water and on-site septic systems. However, public sewer may be available in some areas. So looking at our land use plan and our policies that were included in that, Land Use Policy 4 encourages quality development and reduced impacts on existing uses. It encourages new industrial uses to be located in areas with historic industrial activity or in areas away from existing residential development. There's also the Housing and Economic Development Policy as part of that land use plan, which promotes the development of prime industrial lands. It promotes the development of high-quality and planned industrial parks and appropriate locations for light industrial uses. Looking at the zoning map here, you'll see the majority of the site, again, is located in the rural agricultural zoning district. Just to the south along Browley Road again, that area is the rural residential. I do want to point out the yellow hatched area, that is another overlay district, much like the one we just discussed with the conservation area. This is the water supply watershed protection area. So there are certain provisions that will have to be met for any development within that water supply watershed. It basically limits the density. It has provisions that must be met for density requirements as well as certain types of uses. And I just covered that. The proposed zoning is for general industrial. Is primarily intended to accommodate a wide range of manufacturing, warehousing, wholesale, and related commercial and service use in areas that have access to major thoroughfares and the necessary utilities to support such development. The Conservation Overlay District is to establish or provide for a permanent open space and desirable buffer between the proposed land uses and incompatible adjacent land uses, which we just discussed. So this is the map that has been submitted to our office for the rezoning, which you've seen the outline on the zoning map and land use plan map. But I wanted to point out the conservation area buffers that we just talked about. So the petitioner is proposing 100-foot buffers for conservation in areas that abut residential properties. So any property that is not owned by a warehouser or not being used for farmland, they have provided a 100-foot conservation area buffer along those boundaries. And I've zoomed in a little bit here. You can see it's kind of hard to wrap your head around the size of this 3,000 acres. So zoomed in a little bit here to show you, better show you that 100-foot buffer along those residential areas. And this is the section along Browley Road. You can see there's no buffer along Browley Road, just along the adjacent property that's residential. And I would like to note that in addition to these buffers, the properties here along Browley Road in particular are fairly deep lots. They're almost a mile deep from Browley Road, and the houses are typically along Browley Road, so you've got a good buffer on their individual properties, then 100 foot onto the Weyerhaeuser property as well. And then this is on the northern side of the site along Saintsville Road. As you move up towards Alpine Taylor Road, there are 3 residential lots that abut this property, and they provided that 100-foot conservation area overlay. The land use plan amendment should be considered prior to the rezoning request. Again, we're doing them concurrently, but we should amend the land use plan first. And given that the availability of sewer and the site being designated as a potential mega site by the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina, planning staff does recommend approval of the request to amend the land use map in the Envision Pitt County 2045 Comprehensive Land Use Plan to designate the subject property as employment/industrial. As far as the rezoning request, Pitt County Planning staff finds that the request is consistent with the Envision 45 Comprehensive Land Use Plan and meets the criteria to be designated as employment industrial on the future land use plan map. The area requested for the rezoning has been identified as a potential mega site by the Economic Development Partnership, and sewer service will be provided by Greenville Utilities without voluntarily annexation. So, planning staff finds that the request is reasonable and in the public's best interest because the proposed mega site will attract major industries potentially consisting of advanced manufacturing, life science, pharmaceutical manufacturing, medical devices and supplies, food and agricultural logistic distribution. These industries will create thousands of jobs and generate a significant capital investment for the local and regional economies. The site has significant spatial separation from the existing residences, and the proposal includes the establishment of those conservation area overlay districts that we talked about to preserve the areas of the site in their natural state and provide additional separation from any residential areas. Furthermore, the development of the site will include major improvements to the local infrastructure, including roads, electric, water, sewer, and telecom services. Staff recommends approval of the request by Weyerhaeuser from rural agricultural and rural residential to general industrial and establish the Conservation Overlay District. At this time, public comments will be entertained by the Planning Board. The board will make a recommendation following the public comment period to the Board of Commissioners, which again, will hear this item on July 21st at 6 o'clock. So at this time, we'll turn it back over to you to
Thank you, Mr. Hill.
open the public
We
hearing.
appreciate it. Before I open up the public comments, does the board have any questions of Mr. Hill? Any questions?
Jonas,
of Mr. Hill?
can you go back to the watershed slides?
Yes.
Were they in the packet?
I do not believe that slide was in the packet, no.
Can you explain that better?
Sure,
And the
so.
next couple slides? It felt like we went fast through that.
Right,
and I didn't
so
think I'd
the
see
water
it.
supply watershed, again, is this hatched area in yellow, shown in yellow. It's an overlay district that's included in the zoning ordinance. The water supply watershed has been here in Pitt County, since the early 90s. And the reason for that is this particular watershed drains just north of the intake for Greenville Utilities public water supply. So the purpose of this overlay district is to protect the water quality of this watershed. So it prohibits certain uses that will not be allowed that could be detrimental to the public's drinking water. Those are manufacturing companies that would directly discharge into the river, have some sort of byproduct that they're discharging into the river. So it also has density requirements that there's two different areas of the watershed. So there's the critical area, which is a radius around the actual intake, which is more restrictive. This particular area is in what is known as the protected area. Again, these rules were adopted and implemented by the state of North Carolina back in the early 90s. Since that time, the state has done a good job of implementing stormwater regulations. You guys, some of you older guys that have been on the board for some time may remember when we were adopting stormwater regulations. So those regulations have kind of eased the water supply watershed restrictions because it does not allow surface water to drain off as fast. Those stormwater rules require detention basins, wet ponds, stormwater control measures that will treat any runoff from residential areas, commercial areas, industrial areas, that sort of thing. So most of the time, the requirements of the water supply watershed can be met by meeting the other stormwater rules that are in place. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Okay.
I Got a question for you, Jonas.
Yes.
Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Does this have a retention pond in this area to catch some of this runoff?
So, this is not a conditional use district rezoning. It's a straight rezoning. So we don't know what size development's gonna come at this point. However, like Ben said on the previous request, we will require a site plan. And as part of that site plan review, we will make sure that they comply with all the other regulations, whether it's watershed, stormwater, soil erosion and sedimentation control, access for roadways, that sort of thing. All of that will be reviewed at a later date when we get a true site plan in for development.
One more question. if I may.
Yes, sir.
Can you go to that third slide for the watershed
Yes,
and just pause on it, just so I can see it?
if I can.
Yeah.
So what you're looking at is activities that are allowed, or in some cases not allowed. So you got the critical area, which again, this is not located within the critical area. It is located within that protected area. So it does allow for landfills. It does allow for petroleum contaminated soil sites can be located in this area. But they still have to meet the state regulations that are in place and have to get permitted for intense uses. What you'll see, the majority of the uses that are not allowed is the sewage discharge, direct discharge, obviously. The industrial waste would not be allowed to be discharged. Other waste, groundwater remediation and project discharge, and then agricultural, silviculture, residential development, all of that is allowed. Any other questions?
Believe, Mr. Little.
So, Jonas, let me ask you, would it help then to expand the watershed protection, or would it be detrimental?
What do you mean by expand?
Well, go back, you said just part of that property.
Right. So the water supply watershed is not an area that we have identified. It's identified by the state and mandated that the local governments enforce the regulations. And this line was delineated, it's basically the watershed that drains to that area. So they picked up and identified that particular watershed as being a water supply watershed protected area. All right.
Mr. Hardy, did you have a question?
No.
All righty. Any further questions for Mr. Hill at this moment? Mr. Hill, we'd like to retain you
All
for
right.
further questions later. I'd like to go ahead and open up this meeting to public comments related to this rezoning. And I do have a list here of lots of folks, so please bear with us. Once again, if you go to the podium, please state your name and your address where you live. Scott Anderson is first.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Again, my name is Scott Anderson, 332 West Meath Drive, Greenville, North Carolina. I'm here tonight on behalf of the applicant, Weyerhaeuser Company. I'm an owner of Art Consulting Group, and we are civil engineers and surveyors located here in Greenville, North Carolina. And we've been hired by Weyerhaeuser to assist with the due diligence and entitlement phase of the project. We're excited to be here tonight to present this request to you and to discuss the opportunity for a potential mega site in Pitt County. A total of 30 sites were submitted across the state to the Economic Development Partnership of North Carolina for consideration as potential mega sites. Of those 30 that were submitted, 7 were selected as suitable for future development, with the Pitt County site being selected as one of the 7. The Pitt County mega site exhibited several site strengths which made it attractive It has a single property owner. I think that's key. This is a large site that has a single property owner. It's a well-maintained property. It's easy to access a 4-lane road and interstate, and it has easy access to water, sewer, electricity, and natural gas, and there's a regional airport located nearby. In September of 2024, we began working with Weyerhaeuser, the Greenville Eastern North Carolina Alliance, staff from the Pitt County Planning Department, and staff from the City of Greenville to develop the next steps for this future potential mega site. So the request before you tonight is the result of many meetings that were held with key stakeholders, a joint meeting of the Pitt County Commissioners and the Greenville City Council, as well as 4 public input sessions to hear the concerns of the community prior to submitting this request to you. The location of the requested general industrial zoning area was chosen based on proximity to existing infrastructure while minimizing the negative impacts on the adjacent community. The rezoning is located completely on property owned by Weyerhaeuser and does not change the current zoning for any other private landowners in the area. We placed the proposed zoning lines so that they are a minimum distance of 500 feet from any existing home. And in addition, we've added the 100-foot conservation overlay buffer along the zoning lines that abut a property where the adjacent property owner is not currently owned by Weyerhaeuser or a public right-of-way. The access to the proposed mega site will be through a newly constructed multi-lane road that will be constructed again entirely on Weyerhaeuser property, and will have direct connection to Highway 11, which will minimize the impact to the existing road network in the surrounding area. The requested zoning is critical to allow Greenville, East North Carolina, the Alliance, the opportunity to access grant funds to further study the feasibility of the project, which we believe will have incredible benefits to Pitt County and the surrounding region. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Does the board have any questions of Mr. Anderson at this time? I'm sure we would like to have the opportunity to call you back if
Sure.
needed.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott?
Actually, I do have a question here.
Yeah, I have a
Yeah,
question.
just curious, Scott. The in fact, for Jonas too, but the rezoning application, I guess it's shared on that, I'm just being picky now, okay? Says that it's supposed to be, the applicant is the owner, okay? Or, well, and you didn't sign it, but I'm just curious. Todd Powell, does he own Weyerhaeuser?
He has the authority to sign on behalf of Weyerhaeuser.
And that's what I was assuming too,
Yes,
being a corporation.
yes.
But it's just, like I said, I'm being picky right now because we got too many stakeholders that are
Sure.
asking questions. okay?
Understood.
So I'll come back later with something else on that.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Little?
Just have one quick question.
Sure.
In the application itself, it makes reference to the pad readiness of the site. Can you elaborate specifically what is that?
Josh Lewis with the Economic Development Alliance is going to come up and speak next,
Okay.
and he may be ready to answer that question for you.
I think we have
Mr. Chairman.
another
Yes,
question.
sir. When you were doing your research, when everybody was getting together and doing their research, you mentioned that you had uncovered some negatives when you were doing your due diligence. I was wondering if you could tell us what some of the negatives that you came up with, and what was the plan, or what did you come up with to address some of those negatives for the outlying community when you did your due diligence?
Yeah, so I wouldn't necessarily say we were negatives. Any site has challenges. And so we did hear a lot of feedback from the community, and I think that's where the negatives were, with impact to the adjacent roadways, some environmental concerns. What are we doing with wetlands? What are we doing with flooding? What are we doing wildlife? Those were the negatives that come with any development. And so we heard a lot of those concerns. When we were deciding on what's that right distance for, do we want a 100-foot buffer from existing houses? Do we want a 200-foot? Do we want a 500-foot? What are those appropriate distances? That's where a lot of those meetings came from, is, okay, how do we make sure that we're appropriately buffering the adjacent properties? the next step, once this, if this is approved, the next step will be to apply for the grant funds. Once we get those grant funds, then we can go into detailed studies to pay for the wetland delineations, the environmental reports, the wildlife studies, the traffic impact analysis, where we can really come up with true plan then, where is the best spot on this 3,300 acres to situate the 1,000-acre mega site. And so I think those are the next steps that hopefully will come if this is approved tonight.
And again, that would be something where the public would be involved
Yes.
when we get,
Yes.
okay.
And so I have a question now. So there is a chance that the grant will not be approved as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. Although, you know, the first step was to decide, okay, is this appropriate for a mega site? So 30 sites were submitted. Out of those 30, 23 were kicked out already. And so only the 7 sites that have been approved as potential mega sites are available to access those grant funds. So you got a 1 in 7 chance of getting access to those grants, and it's on a first come, first serve. So the first people, there have been some that have been accessed already, but there's still a significant portion that's available.
One more question. So, no further action of development, cutting the trees down, bulldozing the land, excavating, whatever is necessary for site preparation will not occur until further actions down the road. Is that correct?
Yes. No further actions for development will occur. Now, this is a current operating forestry service. So Weyerhaeuser does have ongoing timber harvest plans. And so they are on a rotation where they're actively, you've got, 0-year growth all the way to 20-year growth. And they do have an active forestry plan where so there may be clearing associated with the forestry plan, but no clearing or development at this time.
Thank you.
You said that this rezoning allows for access to those funds,
Correct.
but it also is the last stop before, let me rephrase. Once access to funds is made and the planning and studies are done, you can continue with development, and then maybe this is for you and staff, maybe. But there is no more review by this board or county commissioners at that point because it's been rezoned.
It would be rezoned. Now, anytime that we're going to go in and develop, they're still going to have to go through a preliminary plat to create any new roadways, utilities, to subdivide the property to be able to sell and develop. You will still have some additional board level approvals.
It becomes a staff function then, correct?
Correct. Yeah, so just to elaborate on that, it would not come before the planning board or board of commissioners. It would be done at a staff level. And as long as it met the regulations for development per the zoning ordinance and met all the conditions in that, staff would approve it.
Yes, Mr. Little.
Scott, Jonas, again, can I just mention that as we talk about this and what you just said too, something seems a little backwards on this, because we're asking for a rezoning, or you're asking for a rezoning, and then we know that we'll have to make certain studies to see if it will work, and at any point in time, it could be denied and it'll be all off the board anyway. But at that particular time, we're stuck with having what we just did here tonight if we were to choose to do the rezoning. So in my mind, I think Weyerhaeuser is a good partner right now and have been for years, and a great company. I'm just wondering, it's somewhere along the way, and this may be something for Josh to think about too, and I'm sure he has, but do we look back at Weyerhaeuser and see if they have a plan to replant some areas now, and let's reseed, let's grow more crops of trees coming down the road that would enhance everything that is happening now and still look after our community so that everything would be just as well as it is going forward in this land that we're talking about. Because when you get right down to it, this land that we're talking about the only thing that'll grow is trees. So as far as agriculture, but it's the outlying areas of agriculture that are being concerned so much right now. So something to think about even as we go through this conversation tonight, I think.
And we do have a representative from Weyerhaeuser who's on the list to speak to, so he can
Good deal.
address
Thank you,
those.
sir.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you.
Next on the list is Mr. Josh Lewis. Please come forward.
Good afternoon. Took a lot of the information I was going to share, so I'm not going to repeat myself. Happy to be back and share a little bit of information, but more importantly, just speak to the once-in-generation opportunity that the community has to capture state funds on a scale that the community probably hasn't captured before, in pursuit of jobs and opportunity, which will then again feed the local economic system. And if this is what the community wants to pursue, then the economic alliance between the city, the county, and the utility companies will push this forward in a very meaningful way. And so, I just want to highlight a couple details. He covered a lot. One is this is a program that was spearheaded by the state of North Carolina after North Carolina had had so much success attracting large companies and large investments. So North Carolina has a history of supporting these large investments on a significant scale in order to attract a company to a location. So this isn't we'll build a site and the state goes away and we're just sitting here waiting for somebody to come. We're actively pursuing it with additional state incentive dollars. So the hope is if we make the investments, that the state will continue to be a partner, we will find a user. The other thing I'd like to highlight is that, this has been a long process, and some of the rules, you mentioned one about the rezoning, is led by the state. We're trying to fall into all the different rules that they've put in place in order to access the funds. One of them is it has to be zoned for industrial. The reason why is they don't want to invest a lot of money in studies, and then when it comes before the community, and the community says, we don't want it. Right, so they're making the community go through these processes to say, hey, we're getting it zoned correctly. We know you want industrial in this area. We know that you got money and you got a partner and you got the landowners involved. Luckily for us, it's only one landowner who has volunteered to go through this process with us. And then at that point in time, they will release the funds. They're trying to protect themselves as well. And so that's the process, and we're trying to follow it the best of our ability. We've taken great care of trying to get community input. We've promised no annexation. We've talked about no eminent domain. We talk about a roadway through one parcel. We're talking about impacting one property. We're only talking about rezoning one property. We're talking about conservation easements or overlays in order to provide additional buffers. And all those things are still led by the community. They can still decide, hey, we want additional support, or we want additional buffers, or we need these rules in place, or we'll ask the property owner to plant additional trees. And so this isn't a done deal. This is just step one. And part of that process is understanding, is the land viable for a 1,000-acre continuous, pad-ready site that can produce a type of company that the community can benefit from? And so the due diligence funds that we talked about in pot one will determine if we go to pot two, which is the hard infrastructure needed to attract a user. So we're in the process, and we're here to support the community, right? We are an economic development alliance supporting the attraction of manufacturing jobs and opportunity, and we'll continue to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Does the board have any questions for Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I just want to follow up in comparison, I just want to follow up in comparison to all the grants application. There's a comment made reference to pad ready for site development. Can you elaborate a little bit more specific what that is?
So grading, basically cut and fill, having a site ready for construction. Some of the hard infrastructure money that could be spent toward that if it advanced that far.
So in comparison to Edgecombe County, they already have a site-ready facility. So therefore, I'm sure in the scoring and evaluation process, that will be a negative for the Pitt County project because it's not pad-ready?
No. So Edgecombe, a couple of the ones that were included, there was originally 5 sites in the state of North Carolina were selected. Politics, they include 2 of the existing mega sites in order for them to be able to access the funds for different reasons. Edgecombe used their funds to help purchase the the land, right? They had it under option, purchased the land in preparation for the user that they just announced, I don't know, 6 months ago. So it is a competition in that if the funds run out and they don't replenish them, then there's no funds there for anyone. I can share that based on the analysis of which we shared at the last meeting, that Pitt County, and has been, I don't want to throw the state out there and say that they say it's the best site, but it's probably the most competitive, cost-efficient investment that the state can make, right? And so if we are in the game and we're pursuing these funds, I feel confident that they're going to continue to replenish those funds in order to take it to the finish line. The state of North Carolina, I do not feel would invest $100 million, spend the $100 million, get people 20% down the road, and then say, okay, we're not investing anymore. So I don't think it's really a competition. It's just a first come, first serve, and a timeline thing that I think that we're trying to navigate.
Microphone.
Go ahead, go ahead. You go ahead.
My question is, how would the businesses be selected that are able to participate in this mega site?
So if you're talking about the end user of the site, let's say
Yes,
Toyota
yes.
came to Pitt County, the great news is that they're not going to come without support from the state and the county, meaning that it would go through the typical incentive process through the commissioners and through the city and through the state of North Carolina to understand who they are, what are we willing to do to support it, and what are we willing to do to attract them to the site. So just similar to the announcements we've had over the last couple of years with like NePro medical device that's going into the industrial park. That's a very thorough, due diligence, examination from the Department of Commerce to understand if you're dealing with good actors, and then the state decides what incentives they're going to put in the pot, and then the city, county, local partnerships have to decide if they're going to support it with match money. So that's a whole deliberate process of which the community will have input on.
Can you talk about the potential economic impact of this site and how those impacts are distributed amongst, or how it gets distributed amongst the industrial developers and the industry itself versus the homeowners around it versus the county in and of itself?
So if I'm tracking, so the economic impact is the analysis that you'll see from an ROI, like what is your return on investment, is based on the capital investment they put in the plant, whatever it is. Let's say I provide a profile last meeting of the last 60 projects and kind of what the median or the mean is, the average investment. So if we say that, let's just keep it easy, $10 billion, $5 billion, then the county is going to collect on that $5 billion, $10 billion, just like they do any other, real estate, personal property tax, business property tax. In this case, the county is pursuing this in partnership with the state, and, the city has agreed to run the utilities to the site without annexation. So the city has no vested interest from a tax revenue perspective. It's really just based on the tax revenues to the county coffers. And so if you run the figures based on the $5 billion, $10 billion investments, property valuation alone, if investment equals taxable assets, you're talking about tens of millions of dollars a year that the county would collect in property tax or real estate tax. That's not counting, the discretionary spending of the employees, the growth of the population, all these secondary multipliers that help drive up the value of the project.
I have a question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Given best case scenario, what kind of timeline are you looking at to develop a pad-ready site to be attracting clients?
I wish I had the crystal ball, so a lot of it deals with local, rezoning, does it go to county commissioners? If it passes tonight and you guys approve it and it goes to commissioners and it passes, then there's a window in the fall that we can apply for due diligence funds. And then you got the county and partners, we have to select a firm, and then the studies have to be completed. So this is a long runway. This is a long game. If you have a user there in operation in 10 years, that would be a home run. 5 to 10 year period would be a home run, meaning the process moved very quickly and the user was found very quickly. So it's hard for me to give you details on what individual components of the process may be or how long it would take to get a site ready in order just to market it.
Thank you. Mr. Little?
Just curious, and this may be your question or Weyerhaeuser, okay? At what point would Weyerhaeuser discontinue harvesting? Have you got any idea?
No, we haven't had that conversation. I would assume at the point in time of which they've lost control, meaning they don't own it anymore, or there has to be hard infrastructure coming through. I'm sure they're in the business of harvesting trees. They want to continue to do that for as long as possible, but I'll let him answer that because those conversations haven't been had.
Good deal. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, are there any concerns about future rural residential use around surrounding that property? Has that been, was that ever addressed about, if the site is approved, that the future of the residential areas that are surrounding that area, how would they be affected? Was that addressed?
Yeah, so,
Were there any concerns with that?
so through the public information sessions that we had, we heard loud and clear from several in the community that they don't want this type of traffic on Briley Road. They don't want industrial traffic on Briley Road. They don't want their way of life to be impacted by a project like this. And so, the plans that we've shared have a new 4-lane road with a new intersection coming off 11 that comes only through one property. It's the Weyerhaeuser property. We have committed to avoiding, Briley Road for any purposes of access to a site, right? And then we've also agreed that conservation overlay a buffer to provide additional protections against that. So I'm under the belief that we can do this in a way that's, binary. We can satisfy everyone. It's not mutually exclusive, like, oh, this land's here and then everybody else loses. I still think moving forward in the process, we can find solutions to minimize the impact. And that's my hope.
I have one additional question. Other states that have been successful in landing clients, what clients have they been able to attract and actually have gone forward?
Yeah, so I would say that the projects of the last couple of years have been heavy in automotive. Also, I would say pharmaceuticals, Eli Lilly and the big pharmaceutical companies have announced that they're going to invest billions and billions of dollars in the U.S. in the coming years. You see a lot from, energy storage, battery, it's across the board. But I think, and I can probably provide you that slide again of the sample of projects, where they fell in the industry sector and where they fell on investment, where they fell in employment of the 60 that we examined while going through this process. So anecdotally, it's kind of all over the board.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. I'd like to now bring up the next speaker.
Thank you.
I have Lisa Briley.
Hello, thank you for letting me speak tonight on my opposition of the mega site. My name is Lisa Briley.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. My name is Lisa Briley, and I live at 872 Briley Road in Greenville. I'm here to voice my opposition to rezoning of the Weyerhaeuser land for the mega site project because there are several issues that need to be addressed. One of them is environmental. I know several more are coming behind me that are going to go more in detail, but I will say this. Monday, after all the storms, problems, Sunday night and into Monday night, I rode out on Saintsville Road, and the slide that he showed you where it's clear cut already, every row, because they have rows down there where they planted the pine trees, was full of water. I mean, standing water, not just a little bit of water, but it's, as far as you could see, there was water, so it's not, that land does not drain. Also, Johnson Mill Run, that is the main creek that runs to the river, was completely overflooded. All the properties along Briley Road were flooded, as well as further up the road and over into Alpine Taylor. So it does not hold drainage very well. Wildlife preservation is our next issue. There have been several species that have been introduced in the Weyerhaeuser project, like deer and turkeys, that have made a comeback, that were low population in that area, but because of the uniqueness of the area with the woods land and how it's maintained, they have made a comeback. I know there's other species out there as well. My main concern is traffic on Briley Road, because that's where I live. The issues that I'm concerned about are the road conditions and the narrow roads. Briley Road is an extremely narrow road. I pull a horse trailer with horses. I can't even stay in my lane because it's so narrow. I have to overlap, and when I meet somebody, I have to get off the road to be able to pass. Also, it's a lot of potholes from where warehouses and other industries further up the road have used our road to come out to the main road, and those have not been addressed at all by the county to be fixed. We also have a large farming operations in that area. There are 4 big farmers that use that road consistently with big farm equipment. Excuse me. So they go back and forth on that road, and that's going to make traffic terrible because, as you know, people that are not from the farming community do not understand big equipment, and they're going to be speeding by them, which is going to cause wrecks and damage to property and farm equipment. We all know that most people are going to take the most direct route to and from work. I know they said they're going to cut off access, but does that mean they're going to completely shut off Saintsville Road? Because if not, people going back and forth, running late, are going to make the quickest turn in there. So therefore, something's going to have to be done to Brawley Road to add to it, such as widening it, which is can be consistent of displacing about 15 families because they live so close to the road. So we just want to make sure that you understand that we are opposed to it. There are several issues that are there, and I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Ms. Briley, if you'll hold tight there.
Okay.
Board, do you have any questions of Ms. Briley?
I do. Ms. Briley, the farm equipment that you mentioned earlier, you talked about the roads being in disrepair. Is it possible that any of that farm equipment could have had anything to do with some of that?
It might be, but there are more logging trucks, big garbage trucks going up there to the land dump at the end of Brawley Road. That's what we see more of. The farm equipment is not up there. It's just moving from one field to the other, and it's not daily. It's just whenever they need to move, so it's occasionally. But they do use the road. But mostly what we see as far as heavy-duty trucks are the logging trucks coming up and down. I know there's construction on the other end of Brawley Road, so all that construction traffic is going through there. And then the people that are trying to access the landfill thing up there on Briley and Highway 33 use that traffic.
Yes, Mr. White.
Ms. Briley.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like your concerns are the conditions of the roads, and that would be something, I mean, as far as Weyerhaeuser utilizing the roads, that's something that's gonna happen whether this proposed mega site is done or not.
Correct.
Is your main concern that the roads would become even worse with the additional?
No, my main concern is the increase in traffic.
So
It's
just
already a
no
heavily,
user traffic,
right,
just
it's
daily
already heavily used now because the people from the Belleville area to get the welcome coming down that road. People like coming from Tarboro that want to go elsewhere, they cut through. It's a big cut-through road now. So the increase in traffic is our main concern, is that it's just going to double or triple the amount of traffic. So therefore, they're going to have to improve the road to handle that much traffic. And there's like probably 15 houses that sit very near the road. So what's that going to be to them? They're going to have the road in their front doorsteps, or are they going to have to remove those houses and move those people? You know, that's another concern. I live up far enough off the road that it's not going to bother me, but there's others that it may bother. But increased traffic is what it is now, because sometimes it takes me about 5 minutes to get out of my driveway because of the amount of traffic.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Ms. Briley.
Thank you.
May I have Linda Teal, please?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the members of the Pitt County Planning Board. My name is Linda Teal. I reside at 1160 Belvoir School Road in Greenville, and I am here to voice my opposition to the rezoning for this site. I've lived in Pitt County, north of the river, my entire life. I am not opposed to economic growth if it does not harm our community and our citizens. This project will place a significant displacement on our wildlife, their habitat, along with the possible destruction of wetlands and the Great Pocosin, which we have known this to be for years. There are at least 3 species of special concern, according to the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission, that live in this site. Additionally, I am greatly concerned about the flooding and the drainage of this property. I own a farm that adjoins this property, and even during our recent drought, there have been times when our land remains wet and impassable. Recently, I sent a letter to each of you, and I do appreciate the 3 that responded to me. And I also sent pictures follow-up showing the flooding on our property after the rain. What consequences will we experience when trees are cut down, concrete is poured, and roads are constructed on this beautiful untouched land? The proposed site owned by Weyerhaeuser is a tree farmer's paradise. I farm trees myself in Warren County, and it's also a haven for the wildlife. A mature pine tree can absorb potentially 10 to 150 gallons of water per day, depending on its size and the environmental conditions. Consider the many trees that we will lose in this project, making the drainage such a concern. I honestly have concerns and questions regarding the ability to carry out the amount of water this site will require. Our citizens north of the river do not need to worry about flooding every time it rains. We have been in a major flood issue before. Please consider my request and do not approve this rezoning. And I do thank you for your time and your service. Do you have any questions?
Yes, board, do anybody have any questions of Ms. Teal at this time? Thank you, no questions. May I have Joseph Teal?
Good evening. I'm Joseph Teal, 1160 Belvoir School Road, Greenville. And I'm here to voice my opposition to rezoning the Pitt County mega site. My father, Joe Teal, was a Pitt County wildlife officer for over 30 years. He was instrumental in reestablishing the white-tailed deer population, which began in Alpines, the current Weyerhaeuser site, or the mega site project location. To lose these 10,000 acres of Poquoson land would be detrimental to our community, nation, state, and county. Secondly, I have a farm that adjoins the proposed Pitt County mega site. Currently, that land is farmed by a contracted operator. I oversee the property in regard to wildlife management. It is a sanctuary for my family where 4 generations enjoy providing, planting natural food for wildlife, observing the wildlife, and hunting wildlife deer, white-tailed deer on the property. With this Pitt County mega site project, our farm, as we know it, will no longer be a place for our family to enjoy due to noise, traffic, flooding, and the recent shooting ordinances. Recently, the county had a lengthy discussion regarding the shooting of firearms near homes and other businesses due to irresponsible citizens who should have been controlled by our local law enforcement. Nevertheless, the ordinance prohibiting anyone shooting from within 300 feet of a home or a place of business would stop our family from hunting on our current property because the proposed buffer zone from our property to the mega site. Please consider the citizens' request and do not approve this rezoning request. Thank you for your time and service.
Board, any questions of Mr. Teal? Thank you, Mr. Teal. May I have Edward Farmer, please? Mr. Farmer, is he still present? All right. Thank you. Moving on, Ms. Rachel Moore, please.
Good evening. My name is Rachel Moore, and I own a 34-acre farm located at 1238 Gum Swamp Church Road here in Greenville. It will be adjacent to the mega site. I'm here to voice my opposition to this rezoning for the following reasons. First, this mega site threatens to destroy a vast ecosystem over swampland, which also happens to be the last largest piece of forest in Pitt County. Once it's gone, it's gone. This site includes many species of wildlife, including those that potentially fall within the jurisdiction of the Endangered Species Act. Second, the loss of trees is going to be a huge problem. As Linda said, a single pine tree can soak up thousands of gallons of water in a year. Without the trees, where will the water go? Also, without the trees, this area would experience what some call shade disparity due to the loss of trees. This means Belvoir will be hotter. Just the other day, we experienced heavy rain in Pitt County. It left parts of our area underwater. I will be sending the planning board dozens of photos to your email showing this. I still have inches of standing water in my yard. Think about how worse that's going to be when they clear cut 3,300 acres of trees. The proposed plan calls for tens of thousands of new residents to the area. The impact on our environment, air quality, traffic, noise, and to our farmers is not worth this investment, especially considering there is no guarantee that a company will come to this mega site. Local government has also said there is no guarantee that this tax revenue will be reinvested in this community. If you do research, other mega sites in the country didn't have anyone come for several years or went bankrupt. To destroy an ecosystem and disrupt the lives and well-being of Belvoir residents so greatly, and to spend so much money on the hope that a business would come does not make sense. This area has long been targeted for these types of projects due to Belvoir being regarded as undesirable. That's not true. Belvoir is beautiful and Belvoir's home. Targeting Belvoir like this not only hurts residents, but it hurts especially residents of color. My property is a horse ranch. The loss of trees will cause extremely damaging flooding to my property, disrupt my way of life, restrict our activities, lower our property value, and push us out of this community altogether. Please reconsider this request and do not approve the rezoning. Thank you for your time. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Board, do you have any questions of Ms. Moore?
I do, just out of curiosity, during your research, who did not get approved and went bankrupt?
A company called Wolf Speed.
And where was that located?
I believe it was in North Carolina, but there's also been other projects where the community has voiced concerns about the wetlands and where Weyerhaeuser has withdrawn their support. But what we see mostly is these mega sites sitting, like the one in Edgecombe County. It sat for several years.
Thank you, Ms. Moore. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Warren Harris, please. Mr. Harris? Mr. Caleb Avery, please.
Hey, my name is Caleb Avery. I live at 1701 Porter Road. My name is Caleb Avery. I live at 1701 Porter Road. As a member and resident of the Belvoir community for the last 28 years, experiencing life with its lessons and teachings from local churches, schools, ballparks, and these local background communities and the people who live in them. I would hate to see the way of life for so many change so drastically for the hope of a project that is so unsure of. As I said in previous meetings that heard many concerns and questions brought up that I haven't been able to receive a solid answer, it is hard for me to sit here and agree to move forward with this mega site project. With the previous meetings, one thing that sat with me most was the comment that we see people want to come back home to Pitt County. As someone trying to start another chapter in my book of life and build here in Belvoir while continuing to be a lifelong member of the Belvoir area, this is not what coming home is. Being home is seeing the Friday night lights over North Pitt, shining over the ponds at, the Weyerhaeuser plant, when we know a ball game is going on in North Pitt. There will be no buffer containing, these lights that have been suggested we put up in these parks and parking lots and buildings and manufacturing plants. Home is hearing the crickets and June bugs and seeing the fireflies at night, not Toyota plants and manufacturing companies' construction, nor for projects that we will have no say on who comes to our community. Home is waving to our farmers going down the roads and tending their crops in the fields, not heavy traffic and new highways that will congest our roads with reckless drivers. We keep talking about the 3,000 acres and not much that about the other 6,000 once we lose the first bit, then the next, how much is left? What about the already vacant buildings? What about the landowners of the people living here now? Who builds these housing developments? Is it locally sourced, nationally known, and thrown up? How do we keep them nice and maintained and not become neglected? How do we ensure the safety of our residents with police, paramedics, fire, and while also updating our hospital and schools for the new planned occupancies? How do we ensure the safety of our children living off these roads and driving these roads? What will happen to our vast wildlife species that inhabited that area so heavily? What will happen to our water runoff, our creeks, rivers, and farmland? What about the pollution and chemicals that are being brought in? I feel some of these issues we should start beginning to get to the bottom of before we start going on with the further processing of this mega site. I'm just asking everyone to really think about the build it and they will come aspect of this project and when we're gambling with the way of people's lives in this community, who for the most part get around and support each other all the time. This is not just a Briley Road issue. With that being said and being brought forth, this is a matter for surrounding areas of the Belvoir, Bethel, Canida, and their respective communities as a whole. I do this to say that I do not support the mega site dream and ask for its disapproval. Thank you.
I just want to thank you for those thought-provoking questions from a young man, okay? So, appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Avery,
Yes, sir.
can you tell me an example? You mentioned you had concerns and had not received a solid answer. Can you give me a specific example of a concern you or that you've heard expressed that you don't have a solid answer to?
Well, just as far as I feel like sometimes in the last previous 4 or 5 meetings that we've had and I've been to and sat through, we're just kind of given the runaround on some of these. And I understand that, some of these answers cannot be given and there's not there's no magical ball that can tell us what's going to happen 10 years, 5 years down the road. But in the same aspect, I feel like some areas as far as the land, it's already wet swamp land, we're going to put in all this money now for land testings and clearances and everything like that when, you can invest that $100 million there and then we're going to shut it down or something. It's not one thing in particular. It's actually like the whole concept that it's kind of like snowballing down for me.
Mr. Chairman. Mr. Avery, again,
Yes, sir.
just like my colleague, I can appreciate the thought that you obviously put into your concerns and the way that you express them. I appreciate that. My question to you would be, putting that same thought into this mega site project, can you see any positives that may come from this mega site project?
Oh, yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, the economic growth and, being able to provide jobs and developments and businesses. I mean, that's always a plus for us and as a community, anything to uplift us and build us and make us continue to go forward. That's not a bad thing, I don't think, and that should never be a bad thing when we look at, trying to grow and improve the way of living. But as far as, well,
I appreciate your honesty on both sides.
Yeah, I mean, yes, sir. Like I said, I don't disapprove of that, but I just feel like it's not bad to have a vision, but at the same time, you have to kind of accept the reality of the situation and, not get too caught outlandish in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Avery.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
May I have Sydney Spain, please?
Good evening. My name is Sydney Spain. I live at 1287 Max Lane, Greenville, North Carolina. I'm not going to reiterate everything that everybody's come up and said over and over. I'm opposed to this. I think there's going to be negative consequences to the surrounding community that is very clear that we don't want. To touch back on what Caleb said, nobody has given a solid answer on how much land has got to be purchased. There's 8,900 some odd acres on that Weyerhaeuser tract, and they're trying to rezone 3,300 acres of it, but what's got to be purchased that the county or the state, whoever's got to purchase it, do they have to purchase the whole thing, or they got to purchase just the rezoned area? I think rezoning it with all of these unknowns is bad for the community, and I don't think that it's the way forward for north of the river. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ant. Mr. Spain, I think a question has arisen that I'd like to call Mr. Anderson back up. And Mr. Spain, please hang out for just a minute.
Yes, sir.
Can you address his question directly?
As far as the number of acres that would have to be purchased?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna lean on Josh. So the Greenville ENC Alliance has an option, or will have an option if the rezoning is approved, we'll have an option to purchase a minimum of 1,000 acres for the mega site redevelopment. So they are getting an option on the land. Once they have a buyer, then they will either purchase and resell, or they will assign that option to the buyer. That's the way I understand it. Josh, clarify
He's back.
if I misstated any of that. So how much of that would somebody be required to purchase? 1,000 acres is the minimum that they're required to purchase. If they have a user that wants more, then they could purchase up to the 3,300 acres that is approved through this rezoning request before they would have to come back to the board and have additional land approved for industrial use. So 3,300 acres is, if this is approved, 3,300 acres would be all that they could use for industrial until coming back to the board. If that makes sense.
Out of a total of 10,000 acres?
Correct.
Approximately. So the remaining acreage would be still in a tree farm owned by a Weyerhaeuser?
That's correct, yeah. Anything that's not purchased for industrial use or sold to an additional user in the future will continue to be owned by Weyerhaeuser and continue to be a tree farm.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Does the board have any questions of Mr. Spain? Thank you for hanging out. All right. Mr. Cody, or Miss Cody? Mr. Cody Avery, please.
My name's Cody Avery. I live at 2312 Durwood Pollard Road, and I don't agree with this. I don't think this is the right time for anything like this to go on. A couple of the questions that have been asked at some of the past meetings that I don't think have been addressed are, what's going to happen with the hospital if we're going to bring in all these people to new jobs? We're going to bring in thousands of residents. What's going to go on with the emergency room? You can't even get in and out of there in less than 8 hours now. Another couple things. If 3,300 acres is approved, you still got 6,000. I know you just touched base on that. I haven't heard from the Weyerhaeuser rep yet. I've heard from Scott, but the actual Weyerhaeuser, what's their plan for the future? Because in other areas, I know New Bern, they have a Weyerhaeuser community with apartments and houses, and they just bring in national builders to build out the land. So my concern is for the entire community. What's that going to do to all the roads in the area surrounding the whole tract of land? We got one school on the north side of the river that you got young drivers going to North Pitt. Then you're going to have big trucks and thousands of other commuters coming in and out of town. I think that there needs to be more stuff figured out before we just move forward with this, and then you have a vote, and then all of a sudden it's out of everybody's hands. They've got the money, taxpayer money, that obviously a lot of people here don't agree with. So, and I just don't think this is the right time. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Avery. Hank? Board, any questions of Mr. Avery? Yes, Mr. Little?
Cody, just wanted to mention, you are a local business owner, right?
That's correct.
And in that, I think you've expressed to me previously, and it's a great question, I think. If this were to become a reality, and you just alluded to some of it too, who's going to be doing the building and doing the work on this mega project? Would it be local businesses, or are we going to be calling in concerns that they use in other places to come in and do that job? And then he asked a great question too. It's going to put a lien on some of our Pitt County services, and the hospital being one of them, but other things too, if I understand you correctly.
That was another point that I missed, that if it is going to be a big building or industrial site, are there stipulations in place that county businesses or businesses from this county, not people from Washington State, California, are coming in to do the building? I think if this is truly to benefit this county, it should be county businesses working on everything. I mean.
Thank you, Cody.
Thank you, Mr. Avery. May I have Adam Smith, please? Is Adam present? All righty. Now may I have Tim Jackson, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Tim Jackson. I'm Senior Director of Real Estate Development for Weyerhaeuser Company. My home address is in Longwood, Florida, but I manage Weyerhaeuser's portfolio of development land across the country. That's what I do. So, and when, Weyerhaeuser's been in Pitt County for a long time, managing timber forests, producing wood products. And so when Josh came to us and said, will we make some part of our land, we own, this parcel itself is a little over 10,000 acres. We own a lot of the land in Eastern Carolina, as you know. But when they asked, would we make some part of it available for a mega site that might be able to attract significant number of new jobs to Pitt County, we said, sure. That's what we did. We said that we'd be happy to participate. So Weyerhaeuser has some experience with mega sites. For example, in Charleston, South Carolina, the Volvo car plant is located on former Weyerhaeuser property that went through a process just like you're going through that ended up with that car plant there. So we've seen it. We sort of understand how this works. So if the property's rezoned, then we Weyerhaeuser will sign a contract with the county under which the county can buy the land. Then the county and the alliance will be doing due diligence studies and be looking at flooding issues. We'll be looking at feasibility study. We'll be preparing a site plan. And then if they decide to move forward and they get money from the state, then Weyerhaeuser's just going to sell that to the county, who will be the developer of the mega site and bring a major employer here, significant new additional employees. Now, the process I just described takes a lot of years, as Josh said. If it were here in 5 years, that would be very, very fast. If it were here in 10 years, it'd be, typical. So Weyerhaeuser, we're going to continue to manage that timber until it gets sold to the county. Hopefully, we're going to keep managing after that, a big bunch of that 3,000 acres still. We'll for sure continue to manage the 8,000 acres to the north, continue that. We'll continue the existing recreational leases that are on that land until the county owns it. So that's our intent. So I hope that helps to clarify and tells you sort of where we are in the process. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Board, do you have questions of Mr. Jackson?
I have a question, Mr. Chairman. In theory, you mentioned the option. Say hypothetically, during the due diligence period, it doesn't pass environmental study. Weyerhaeuser still has ownership of that land.
Yes.
And therefore, they'll be in a position to, I guess, begin to replant trees, if that's the plan?
we would never have taken the trees down if we haven't sold it.
Okay.
The trees are still there. If the option, if,
During the option period,
Right.
you will continue to farm?
yes, sir.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, completely.
And if it doesn't go through, then pretty much you will continue your
Yes, sir. We're
current
just,
model?
no, we're very happy managing timber for us. We're very happy doing that. So appreciate you accommodating the company here, and hopefully we're good partners along the way. So, thanks.
Okay. And you mentioned recreational leases. Are those private citizens or commercial? Who's have the commercial?
Those are hunting leases.
Okay.
So they're with local hunt clubs. If you're aware, all of those are local hunt clubs. They're groups of local people who hunt different portions of our land everywhere. So we evolved from calling them hunt leases to recreational leases. But, yes, sir.
All right. Thank you.
I'm sorry, it's just me again.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But good, I'm glad to see you here. And I mentioned earlier that for Weyerhaeuser, you've been a great neighbor for many, many
Good.
years. And we appreciate that.
It's good to hear.
But I'm just curious too, because I went to the internet just to look up Weyerhaeuser again, to see what your business model looks like now and some of your strategies. And from what I see, you're continuing to buy and purchase woodland and increase your farming. And I'm having a tough time trying to realize that we may lose some of that, which I think is still probably not good, because when you get right down to it, the land that you're farming, that's a great use for it. So I'm just curious too, when you think about that, are there other markets that you might be able to, those trees that you're growing, that you would sell to, other than pulp for paper, or are you already carrying it to its utmost use?
At the moment, right, so it's the Weyerhaeuser business model. There's timber, so we manage timber, and then we harvest it and we sell it. Much of it goes to a mill that we own. Much of it goes to a mill someone else owns, wherever that is, and then we replant. So we have to replant. At the same time, we are always buying more timberland. The portfolio grows, and then we're selling the less productive timberland. Some of the timberland is adjacent to a town that wants to grow some, so we put development, we put an industrial park, or in the gentleman's case, talked about New Bern, at the edge of New Bern. So we're doing that. So that's coming out of production, but we're over here buying other land to bring it into production. So the timber folks like to make sure the portfolio of land, the core timber land, remains at least the same size or more. So that's sort of where this fits in. Did that help to answer your question? So here, if this moves forward and 1,000 acres or 3,000 acres moves out of timber production, it'll happen over time. And I can assure you, Weyerhaeuser will be replacing that in coastal Carolina, somewhere else. I couldn't tell you where, but that's the business that we're in. And we own large parcels. We don't own the 50-acre farm or the 200-acre farm, which we just take it as a serious responsibility to the community that we ought to watch out for it in the long term. So this is one of those kinds of uses that we think we're turning it over to the county and the Alliance to decide how to go forward and how to do it, and they're going to figure that out. We're not just going to sell the corner to some industrial user, for example. That's just not how we're doing it, as you can see. I hope that's helpful.
Of course, you always hear hearsay too, and one of the things that, I've heard whether it's a rumor mill or just pure fact, that before this fully materializes, if it were to go that way, that Weyerhaeuser has said that they would not sell just 3,300 acres. They would want to sell the whole.
That's just not true.
87, okay.
Not true. No, there's no truth to that. No, we own the land that would connect this 3,000 acres out to Highway 11 directly on our property, straight highway. That we would sell that as part of this. But what doesn't go for the mega site and for the road to get to and from it, we're going to continue to own it, continue to farm, to harvest, and manage it as forest, yes.
So to this point then, also, there has been no deal already made, right?
There has not been a signed contract done, no, sir. There's no ink on anything yet.
So just one more question.
Sure.
I'll leave. Back, we were seeing some pictures earlier of that property, and I know where that property is, but there's some land right now that's been cut over, and it's laying there vacant. So how long will that piece?
It can't sit that way more than 18 months under the sustainable forestry requirement, so it will be replanted 18 months after.
Within
so-
18 months?
Yes, sir, and it sort of has to go through a process before it's ready to plant.
And the
So-
cycle for harvest is?
Cycle for harvest is 13 to 15 years, it gets thinned. In 20 to 23, 24 years, it gets clear cut and go back again. That's typical. Now,
I'd like for you and I to have the same conversation 60 years from now, okay?
okay, looking forward to it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Mr. Jackson, are you able to address some of the questions? Some folks that spoke previously said that they have not heard from Weyerhaeuser. Now is your opportunity.
I think I just told you where we sit, what we're doing. We've agreed we'll sell this land to the county, the Alliance, who will go through and do the due diligence work, for example, and then figure out how much of the land they would like to acquire in order to meet this need. We're going to be alongside of them. Obviously, our folks know the land better than anybody because they've been on it a long time. They know here's where the water really does drain and all of those kinds of things. And we understand when the trees go away, here's how much more water is not being sucked up by the trees. We also understand, so how do you manage that so that there's no more water flowing off this land than flowed when it was forest, when it was a fully treed forest. I mean, that's the requirement. The state requirement says you got to manage that. So we understand how to do that, and we're going to be side by side with the county and the Alliance looking at that through the process.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Jackson.
Thank you. Appreciate
Board,
it.
any more requests or questions, Mr. Jackson?
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
May I have Brandy Duncan please step to the podium?
Good evening. My name's Brandy Duncan. My address is 780 Warrenwood Road in Greenville, North Carolina. I think as a community, we still have a lot of questions that hasn't been answered. One of the things in Belvoir is it is a heavy flood zone area. It hasn't been addressed by the county. It hasn't been addressed by the city. It hasn't been addressed by the state, period. So we have a lot of clay under our topsoil. Now, with phase 1 and phase 2 of the environmental assessment, I don't think it's going to pass. You're going to have to spend more money in construction of storm drains, trying to get the water off of the land so it doesn't flood. Now, the proposition that I've read online is this is close to a $500 million deal to propose the 1,000-acre mega site. So it's going to increase as far as construction-wise and surrounding areas. That hasn't even been addressed. And I think that's a lot of the community's issues. We have issues that haven't been addressed, and I don't think this deal is addressing it either. And that's why I'm opposed to it. And another thing as far as Weyerhaeuser, a question I have for their sustainability CO2 project that is part of their business deal. How does this affect their sustainability? Can anybody answer that? As far as your CO2 sustainability plan, replanting, you're selling 3,300 acres of land, but you're not replanting any of those trees. So our CO2 is going to rise and air quality is going to decrease. Nobody has mentioned that either. There's a lot of environmental impacts that nobody has addressed. And I don't think it's going to pass phase 1 or phase 2. And if you vote on this as far as residential and it fails, then do you go back and rezone it for forestry? I mean, doesn't that leave a lot more meetings down the road?
Thank you, Ms. Duncan. Very good questions. If you'll hold tight. Mr. Jackson, I think you mentioned it, if you'll repeat what you said about reclaiming in relation to the CO2
So, I'm
bank.
happy to say, we fully, Weyerhaeuser will intend to replace that bit of forest somewhere else, to buy additional forest somewhere else in coastal Carolina. So that's, we have other programs that are carbon storage kinds of projects that we're involved in across the country, and maybe that's part of what you're talking about. But I think here, it's just, we would sell this, whatever gets developed that we don't own anymore, we would be over here buying other land and putting forests in it. That's our intent.
But it would be in the surrounding area, or possibly even the state.
I think, well, no, I think it would be in coastal Carolina, because it would be places that feed the same mills that are being fed here.
Okay.
That would be our business plan, as I try to describe. Thank you. Very good. It's a very, very good question, though.
Thank
Thanks.
you. Is there any other questions?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Chairman, do you have a concern that perhaps local dollars are going to be poured into this project without any return?
Yes, absolutely. You're going to have to build the community up. If you're proposing a mega site and there's going to be a whole bunch of people coming in, employment, this, that, and other, can our community in Greenville sustain that level of population without having to expand or upgrade? Say our hospital, say emergency services, our firefighters. I mean, are we able to fully protect this area if something happened as far as like emergency services? Has that been looked at? I haven't heard anything about it. I mean, in Greenville, don't get me wrong, I like the idea of bringing revenue into the area. That's great. They proposed 1,000-acre mega site. But this is a bill for 3,300 acres. So that leaves 2,300 acres unattended for, no plan for development. It could possibly be 2,300 acres. It could be 1,000 or the whole thing. There's no telling as far as, again, it's up in the air. Nobody knows who's coming, what industry's coming, if they're going to buy 1,000 acres or they're going to buy 3,300 acres. Nobody knows. Nobody can give us a clear answer. And I think that's where a lot of the confusion lies. And that's why a lot of people are against this, because we don't know. And if we had a crystal ball and we could magically get the answers, I think a lot of people wouldn't be opposed to it. But because there's so much uncertainty and how it would affect the area, the residents, because the water table is 10 to 30 feet below the topsoil. It is a flood zone. Like I said, everything needs to be looked at as far as drainage-wise, stormwater, all of that needs to be constructed in the area for the site not to be flooded. That's additional dollars. That's additional taxpayer money. Nobody has said anything about that.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan.
I did have one additional
Sure.
question, Mr. Chairman.
Who's what?
So, Ms. Duncan, what would be an industry that you feel the community would be opposed to coming in and building on this mega site, be it 1,000 acres or the whole 3,000 acres? Is there a type of industry that you feel the community would be opposed to coming in and locating there?
Anything that affects noise pollution, air pollution, or environmental. Those are the three industries that I think the community is opposed to. Now, for the area itself, I know they talked about some road construction as far as like the mega site, but the surrounding area roads are terrible. They're not going to support the traffic. It sucks. They've repaved it, too small, there's potholes, it's been refilled 20 times, and it's still like, I'm gonna bust a tire running down this road. The area itself is not sustainable for this project unless they sink money into it. It is what it is.
Thank you, Ms. Duncan.
Thank you.
Ms. Duncan? You addressing to Ms. Duncan?
This is for Josh.
Oh, Mr. Josh, sorry.
When the grant was written or the proposal was made, what were some of the caveats to it as far as what would be done in her question, like the things that she says that have not been addressed? Like, we know the environmental studies have to be done. We know that the transportation they'll look at the roads and all of that. I think her question was, when does that happen? Because I think some of us are clear on when it happens, but they're not clear. Like, you wrote the proposal, it was accepted by the state, and in it had certain things that had to be included. I think they have some uncertainty about what they are in the time frame for each.
Yeah, so I think the clear thing is, that so everybody understands process-wise, the phase one, the studies, working with DOT, that we're going to determine whether the site's viable. The state of North Carolina is not going to pump hundreds of millions of dollars into a site that's going to be flooded and that a user can't use, or you can't get a road to, or you have all these externalities that prevent an actual project. And I also want to be clear that the state of North Carolina, Pitt County, and everybody, they're only investing in this for a positive ROI, right? So net new revenue to the locality in order to address community needs however they see fit. If it's a community that thinks that we need new schools, they can fund schools. You know, any revenue the county gets now, they have to make decisions on what they do. The whole idea is Pitt County is going to leverage investment from the state that they don't have to make locally. So the local burden and the break-even point for the investment from the county speeds up drastically. Actually, this project never happens without state dollars flowing in. And so the idea to increase our community services, increase our support for police, firefighters, schools, hospitals. I mean, the hospital has its own plan to address congestion and things that happen. The reason why we're facing that is we've had pretty, excessive growth over the past 5 or 10 years, and we hadn't had the revenues to keep up with that growth because the pressures on the community health services are coming regionally. Right, so the only way to fix it is with what? More revenue. You only get revenue through certain projects. If you look at the community survey about land values, what's the highest and best use from revenue perspective, it's industrial, right? It's manufacturing. The least beneficial is residential, but you need residents to work it. So all those things, this is a revenue generating vision, right? And this is about the future of Pitt County's health from an economic perspective for, you hear some people say the next 50 or 100 years. And so that should be the story. This is about improving the community's health, economic health, and providing opportunities for the folks that move here. We currently grow at about 2,000 people per year, right? And we're absorbing those through the housing developments that are currently going up, multifamily, affordable housing. You have lots of different areas that are trying to respond to that growth. The schools are trying to respond to that growth with their own plans for how they invest in facilities and grow. So this is a growth story, but the good news is we have a runway in order to start making those plans, and it is a community plan.
Does that help you, Ms. Brandy?
Josh, can you perhaps, we use the term due diligence, and some of us may be familiar with due diligence on an economic sense. Could you describe due diligence in this particular project? What entails due diligence?
Yeah, I'm happy to bring the experts here. I'm not the certified
Well,
engineer.
We can address that in Mr. Anderson.
Yeah, I think he can add more to that.
Yeah, so in this type of project, when we talk about due diligence, we're going to start doing environmental studies to evaluate streams, wetlands, buffers, wildlife, all of those. We talked about the phase 1, phase 2 environmental studies. We're going to do traffic impact analysis. And then we're going to start putting some pencil to paper and figuring out budgets. Does it make sense financially? What costs do we have? Greenville Utilities is going to look at, okay, in order to get this water, sewer, electric, natural gas infrastructure to the site, what's that going to cost? What benefit, what revenues are we going to get back on that? As Josh said, we're not doing this to lose money or to put a bigger cost burden on the county and its citizens. We're doing this, and we're going to make sure in that due diligence that we are making sure that the investment that we make, that as residents, citizens of Pitt County, that money is returned back to us to allow us to improve and to grow our other infrastructure, both for the site and our surrounding community. And again, a lot of the funds that we're accessing, those are already state funds that our local tax dollars have already paid into, and they're going somewhere. And so this is the opportunity for us to capture those funds and bring them back to Pitt County rather than going to somewhere else, the western part of the state or somewhere else. So does that answer your question?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Board, any discussion related to this matter? If you'll refer to page 113 and 14 that include a potential motion that includes our consistency statement for either approval or denial.
Mr. Chairman, could I interrupt real quick?
I've got to close
It-
public.
If you
comment.
could close the public comment period, but also if there's anyone else here that wishes to speak that maybe didn't sign up before you close that public hearing.
Thank you for your leadership. Do we have, yes, please.
My name's Deborah Duncan. I live at 780 Warrenwood Road. I've owned that land since 1972. I was there when the flood came through. I have 2.5 acres of wooded land and another 1.5 acres of wooded land around my property that I own. When the flood came through, my property was the only property that did not flood. I had about 1 foot of standing water. Everybody else had 4 or were flown out of their house. Now, you're taking that land, you're clearing 3,300 acres. I had neighbors standing on the top of their roofs. You're going to take that away, and you're saying you're going to fix the drainage. Well, I've been there. My grandchildren have to walk a 1/4 mile down my road from the school bus. And it doesn't matter that there is 3/4 foot of water standing that they have to walk through. But Pitt County doesn't care because you haven't been out there to look. We've called. I've called the school. Everything I can do. Now you're going to take away those trees that absorb a lot of that water. And if you go where I live right now, and it's field in front of me, there's a good 2 feet of water standing in the field. Now and I'm like a 1/4 mile from Riley Road. And at the dead end, some of that on the other side backs into that warehouse land. When you take that, how much more water is going to come onto my property? Am I going to lose my house this time? That's what the community is concerned about. And you can say you're going to do this, you're going to do that, but nobody has made an effort as of right now to fix the problems that are already there. Fix the problem now before you continue to build, please. That's why I am against the mega site. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else who'd like to make an address to the board?
How y'all doing? I'm Bobby Manning. I live on the dead end of Warrenwood Road. She lives at the front. I live at the dead end. This last rain that we just had, water was already up to my front porch. We have been flooded twice. I've had to replace heating systems, everything under my house 2 times because the water will not go nowhere. We talked to the state. They won't do nothing about cleaning the ditches. But yet, you want to take down the trees and we're going to get more water? Look at Steve's yard. Steve's yard back there, the water is up to his back doorstep. But he hasn't said anything about it, so I guess he's scared to say something. But I'll say something for him. But the drainage is a big problem, and the water is tearing our road up. It's on a dead-end road, but nobody's going to do nothing about it. So, no, I don't agree with what's going on here. That's my say-so. Thank you. Any questions?
Does the
on
board
it?
have any questions of Mr. Manning?
Chicken?
Whoa, come back, Bobby. Come back, Bobby. Come back, Bobby. No, I didn't have to bring that up, but I can show you pictures of what you're talking about right now, okay? But right now, for this project that we're talking about, let's address this. But I totally agree with you and the miss that just came, too. As far as the county, we do need to do something about the drainage.
We do.
Throughout the county, in the ditches and in the canals.
Yeah.
So, and that's for all the county, I do
Yep.
believe. But thanks for bringing me up.
Well, somebody had to.
That's
so
right.
shoot.
All righty. Would anybody else like to address? Yes, sir. Please come forward.
Hey guys, Scott Johnson, 2537 Brook Lane, Winterville. Actually, they brought up some really good points, and I kind of wanted to hear from Scott. Scott, on any of the projects you guys have done, have you also, when you were kind of putting those together, were you also able to solve some of the problems that maybe, as this gentleman said, or this lady said, the state hasn't addressed? Maybe along with that project, make a good environmental impact with those projects? And if so, is that something you guys are looking at for this?
Great question. So I've been doing this in Eastern North Carolina for a little over 25 years. And in my career, I like to think that the projects that we have done, that we have designed, that we have built, have made an improvement in the community I live in. As being a resident of Eastern North Carolina, when I ride down the road and my kids look at a site and they know that I've done it, I want them to be proud of me for designing that site. And so I realize the impact of the projects that we make on the communities that they serve. And so stormwater management, as Jonas, I think, mentioned earlier, stormwater management rules have come a long way. Even during my career, I've seen where we have gone from no stormwater management required at all. You built what you wanted, the water just ran off. If it floods, great. Then we added detention requirements in. So we had to start looking to make sure that after we built the site, the water leaving the site was at a no greater rate than it was before we built there. And so that's when you started seeing these stormwater ponds, these dry holes that will fill up with water, they'll hold it, and they'll slowly let it down and dissipate over time. Then the state has gone to nutrient management, where now we're not just looking at the volume of water running off the site, we're looking at the nitrogen and phosphorus that are leaving the site. How do we treat that? How do we capture that and make sure that we're getting it to a level that our rivers and the estuaries can handle the runoff from the site and improve that? So stormwater management has come a long way. Now we're looking at low impact development. What are some things other than just digging a big pond that will hold water but will let it out for a slower rate over a long period of time? Studies have shown that does as much or more damage than if we had just let it go fast, because Our streams are not, and creeks are not made to handle that continuous, steady flow of water. So now we're looking at, okay, we've got wetlands on site. As we get to looking at permitting, that the Corps of Engineers looks at all the sites that have wetlands on it. We have to get permits to make sure that what we're doing, we're avoiding and minimizing the impact to that. That's always the first step in the process of our application is, what do we do to avoid and minimize the impact to those wetlands and those streams? And how can we use those natural features, the natural low areas, how can we improve those that when the water hits them, that we're not overwhelming them and inundating them? So it's a long answer, but as I said, in our career, we've really made strides to make sure that what we're doing to impact our streams, our wetlands, has greatly improved over the last 25 years of my career. That answer?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Just want to say, hey, I mean, if they can get some something done to help these floodwaters shed off and keep things from flooding, while also making a positive impact, I get it, I understand it. Do I like the change? No. But do we need growth? Yes. But the entrance, if this does pass and the entrance is going to be on Highway 11, it needs to be as far south as humanly possible with a big berm right there on the north. Just saying.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Yes, ma'am.
Hey, good evening. My name is Bally Brown, and I'm at 4005 NC Highway 11. I wasn't going to say anything tonight, but these young guys inspired me to do so. So we've heard tonight from the farmers. We've heard tonight about the wetlands, the agriculture, but we haven't talked about the next generation. We haven't talked about these guys' grandchildren. We haven't talked about these guys' future families, my child. Right now, we've got the land. We've got play areas. We've got all of this stuff. I don't have a lot of money. I don't have a big house. I have a loving family, a little bit of land, and for that I'm rich. I am rich. But I live in the house directly next to the parcel that's being proposed for the connection to Highway 11. A, the traffic is going to be insane, more than it already is. I can't get out the driveway as it is. B, how can I trust my kid, my animals, my pets? You know, how can we freely roam outside? We can't. We're gonna have all these cars coming right up to the property line where that is being proposed. And for that, I fear for this next generation, or those families back on Briley, or back towards Belvoir, who have grandchildren, who could freely play, but now they're gonna have a mega site, higher traffic. You can't do that. You can't play outside with that. You can't grow with that. This land is finite. When it's gone, it is gone. So for that, I oppose the opposition for this mega site.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other takers? We have a hand. Have you've already spoken?
I already spoke, but I just want to make a point about the ditches that I forgot to make, if that's okay. I was on the phone all day Monday about my overflowing ditches. If somebody were to drive in it, they would have drowned. DOT and county, they both suggested to me, hire a private contractor to clean it out yourself. Thank you.
I
have a question for Mr. Chairman. I
yes,
have just
sir.
a question for Jonas. Is Belvoir part of a drainage district?
No.
Because you know what has happened in some places, and I would say Belvoir might be one of them. The landowners didn't accept contributing to a drainage district. And now the ditches are full and the canals are full, and I'll end my comments with that. A long time ago. It was a long time ago.
Gentlemen, you started to raise your hand Sir, if you'd like to make a statement or address the board, please come to the podium.
My name is Joseph Spencer, and I live at 3300 on Belvoir Road, Highway 33. I'm listening and at all that's been taking place, but my concern is that we have never had nothing did, like the lady said, about our drainage. I talked to countless of people. I live outside Steve. My house had been flooded. My septic tank had water over it. This time, we couldn't shower. We couldn't use the bathroom because our septic tank was flooded. And I had been talking, I had been also in the 99 flood. Water came into my house. And I had lost everything downstairs, and I couldn't get no assistance. You know, my thing it is, we need to do something about the drainage now. Now. And we're talking about taking away the trees. We're going to flood where we at now. And we're going to continue flooding, you know. So my thing is, we need some help with drainage in that area, you know. That's my concern, you know. We got all this money coming. Why we can't do something to clean out the districts or add more drainage so that we won't drain now, you know. That's my concern. So that's why I oppose that, because if they move the trees, we're gonna flood even more. You know.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm not going to take very much of your time here, but I've got a couple.
Will you please state your name and the address?
Oh, I apologize. My name is Vince Kelly. I live at 1110 Porter Road in Belvoir. I've been listening to a lot of the statements here tonight, and I believe as a community we're being asked to take in good faith that all these studies and everything's going to be done in the appropriate way, hoping and praying for grant money that's going to help fund this project. And I get this uncanny sense of deja vu from, say, 30, 35 years ago with the Global Trends Park that we put hundreds of millions of dollars into, and what's happened out there? Nothing. It's a dead zone. Other than a few places that work on a few military aircraft, you know, a couple a week, maybe. We've seen, the area has seen no return on their investment. And I just don't think it's right. And that's why, part of the reason why you're seeing so much opposition from the people who are directly affected by this mega site going in. Another thing, we can't fill the jobs that we have here in Pitt County right now. I work at one of the top manufacturing sites in this county, right over there at Avient, and we're right next door to Thermo Fisher. We can't find people to take the jobs. And y'all won't, and we're being asked to put in a mega site on a hope and a prayer that we're going to get another industry to come in. We don't have the labor pool to fill another site. And the curious thing to me is the people that I'm seeing that's all for this idea aren't affected by it at all. The people that are being affected by it are most of us right here north of the river within, say, 5 miles of this site. Most of us grew up playing on the land, you know, whether it be riding four-wheelers or maybe going out camping or spotlighting, whatever. We know this area better than most of the people who are trying to make some of these statements of how we can expect improvements to the land. Right now, I can carry you down roads in that area where water's running freely, right across the roads. And I mean, we're talking several days since we've had any hard rain. Alpine Taylor Road, I'll guarantee you there's 6 inches of water running across part of that, you know, just a little ways off of Saintsville. The woods probably got, you know, anywhere from 2 inches, maybe up to 10 inches of water standing in them right now from where it's backed up in all the drainage ditches. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of us from northern Pitt County being opposed to this, mainly because we're the ones that's going to have to pay the price if this site's put in. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Do I have any more people who would like to, who have not already spoken? Please address,
Ms. Brandy has a question.
please come to the podium. Oh, have you already spoken?
Yes, I have one question. It'll take 2 seconds.
Please.
So, sorry, my name is Brandy. I do have a question. So, there's this talk about incentive as far as money coming back into the community. There's no guarantee of money coming back into the community. I think a lot of the residents would be on board if money coming back into the community could address this standing water issue. Because we already have a flood issue in the area. If money is being brought back into the area, then maybe we could address some of this standing water. Is that a possibility with this deal of buying this 33 acres? Is that a possibility? Has it been in talks? Can the community make suggestions like that with this? That's my question.
If I may be liberal to answer that question, it might be a question to be brought to our elected officials
Okay.
who govern that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. I'd like to go ahead and close the public comment period and direct the attention to the board back to page 113 and 14. Or, of course, we entertain any further discussion. Mr. Little.
Oh, you called my name before I pushed the button. You did good. All right. You know, I'm all for progress too, but I've heard a lot of comments tonight that just reassures me that this is probably a great project for another area. I'm not sure it's right for where we're talking about. But in that vein, I would like to make a motion, sir.
Let's hear it.
I move to recommend denial of the proposed rezoning request from Weyerhaeuser Company and find that it is not consistent with the envisioned Pitt County 2045 Comprehensive Land Use Plan and is not reasonable because the request, 1, is not compatible with similar uses in the surrounding area. 2, will have adverse impacts on surrounding properties. 3, will significantly increase traffic in the area. 4, does not protect significant natural features or ecological sensitive areas. 5, will not be in the public interest or is detrimental to the health, safety, or general welfare of the community and to its work culture, as we have heard here tonight. And 6, is in an area where conditions or development patterns have not substantially changed to warrant the proposed rezoning.
Thank you, Mr. Little, for the motion.
Second.
We have a second on the motion.
Mr. Chairman, if I could interject, Mr. Little did a great job with that motion. However, he left out one component that I would encourage to be included in that, and that is in regards to amending the existing land use plan and rezoning. So could you add to your motion to deny amending the existing land use plan? Or
Yes.
comprehensive land use plan
How'd I do?
to that?
And you heard what he said, okay? No.
And then if whoever seconded it would agree, Mr. Forbes?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a
That
mo-
way we're clear on all the needed motions.
Thank you for that. Board, do we have any discussion on the motion made?
Yes, I do. I heard a lot I think, I have no problems with economical growth. I know it's gonna bring money into the county, but what I've heard here tonight was really concerned with flooding. Now, I took that trip Monday, and I saw logs in ditches. I saw canals stopped up. I saw a good friend of mine lose a lot of water in his property, and I think they putting the cart before the horse, because I think all that drainage problem, if it had been taken care of, that you wouldn't have half the people that are here tonight. So, that's it.
I'd
Thank you,
like
Mr.
to make
Hardy.
a comment as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And this has nothing to do with the site itself, but years ago, in 1901, the city of Wilson decided that they wanted East Carolina University to come here. And they had a lot of issues with ECU going to Wilson, and so 8 other towns decided they wanted East Carolina University to come. They had a lot of adversity. They had problems with a lot of things that we've addressed here tonight. However, Washington, Elizabeth City, Kinston, New Bern, Rocky Mount, Tarboro, Edenton, and Greenville were the last of the 8 counties or townships that were selected. And where did East Carolina University end up? We still have problems with East Carolina, but look at, in the grand scheme of things, what we were able to do here in this town. So I think we just need to keep our minds open. And we do appreciate the concerns that you voiced here tonight. We do appreciate and acknowledge the things and the problems that you have in your communities. We have them in other communities, and they had them in 1901 when East Carolina was trying to come here. So I just want you to have that food for thought.
Thank you. Yes.
Apologize, my voice isn't the best tonight, but I'm going to make a comment for a reason, and it's because I sense a lot of mistrust between the process that's happened so far and the community. And to be able to have to come in here and then look at a map where nearly all the property is overlaid by a watershed, and I don't understand all the information about that, and then look at this community and say, I approve to rezone that plot as industrial. And from today, or when the county commissioners approve it, from that point forward, it is industrial, whether the due diligence falls through or not. We are no longer the decision makers or the protection or the balance for what happens to those 3,300 acres. And I don't think that's, to Mr. Lyman's point, it seems a little fast. It seems the backwards way to do things. And I see the potential for growth, but our priority is, we can make a plan and a plot and accommodate comments all day long that happen in a public forum. But the lives of these people that they've talked about tonight is real today and not hypothetical. And we can't change that decision after tonight.
Mr. Chairman, may I make a comment?
Yes, sir.
You know, the whole state of North Carolina was against East Carolina having a medical school because they didn't think the chemistry department was good enough. But Dr. Jenkins fought for that, and he had a vision, and they solved the problems that had to be solved in order to make way for the medical school. And now we have a wonderful medical complex, and it's because of that vision. And I'd just like to say that.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? All righty, we have a motion to deny this request. I'd like to ask for a vote now. All those in favor of denying the request, please raise your right hand. All those in favor of not passing the motion as stated as denying, please raise your left hand as a nay. Thank you, Board. The motion has failed to deny. We now have some more decision-making to make. Yes, Ms.
I move to recommend approval of amending the comprehensive land use plan and the proposed rezoning request from Weyerhaeuser Company and find it is consistent with the envisioned Pitt County 2045 comprehensive land use plan and is reasonable because the request will be in the public interest.
I second that motion.
Thank you. We have a motion to approve the rezoning request and the change of the comprehensive land use plan. Board, do I have any discussions? With no further discussion, I'd like to call for a vote to pass, to approve this motion. With a yay, please raise your right hand. Nays, please raise your left hand. Motion is passed to approve. Thank you. All right.
Just a reminder to those in attendance, as I stated earlier, this board makes a recommendation to the commissioners. The commissioners have the final say, so there'll be a formal public hearing held on July 21st by the Board of Commissioners. We'll send out notices and post those in the newspaper as well regarding that meeting for the final decision on this. And if you want to wait.
Please.
Mr. Chair, I think we're ready to proceed if you are.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. Let's proceed.
All right, so the final item on your agenda is your informational items. Included in your packet, there are two interlocal agreements that were recently entered into by the county as well as the town of Grifton for enforcement of certain ordinances that we have in place. Those being the building code ordinance as well as the flood damage prevention ordinance. The county administers these policies for the town of Grifton, and previous to this, we administered these ordinances in the portion of Grifton located in Lenoir County. These interlocal agreements that we just entered into changes our jurisdiction and only allows us to enforce these ordinances within Pitt County's portion of Grifton and not in Lenoir County. So Lenoir County will assist the town of Grifton in their jurisdiction now, moving forward. So just wanted to make the board aware of that since it does impact our staff functions. Also, there's other various articles and correspondences that we've included in your packet pertaining to planning-related matters. And want to once again tell you this month that we are continuing to work on our monthly reports. There's not one included this month, nor was there one included last month. That is due to our new permitting software that we're implementing. We're still working through the kinks and getting the numbers from those permits to include in our monthly report. So we will make note to get those to you for the months that we missed and moving forward once we get that process worked out. So, Mr. Chairman, that's all I have. I want to say thank you guys for your attentiveness this evening and being here and serving the community. So, thank you.
Just as a general comment, we discussed a little bit amongst ourselves during the break, that, for the record, that it is obvious that the community of Belvoir is in need of assistance as far as water drainage issues. And of course, they're addressing 500-year flood conditions. We hope the good Lord prevents that from happening again. Just like to make that comment that we would like the very best for the Belvoir community.
Absolutely, and I will say that the county is aware of the drainage issues in that area. I was up there even prior to our field trip on Monday following the heavy rains that occurred over here in Pitt County and witnessed some of the flooding that was occurring, localized flooding, but still, when it's your property and it impacts you. So we are aware of the challenges with drainage, not just in the Belvoir community, but throughout Pitt County. Certainly, Belvoir has been impacted more frequently than other areas of the county, but there are certain departments within the county that are looking into what can be done drainage-wise. For example, our soil and water department has received funds from the commissioners as well as state funds to remove debris from drainage ways. So that's just one example of work that the county is putting in trying to make improvements to drainage throughout the county. And it's certainly a bigger issue than just that, but that is one step that we've taken. And I will relay and let the county manager know of the concerns we heard here tonight from that community and see if we can make any further improvements for drainage. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciated that, but let me ask another question. I'm just curious. One of the items that was on, that you just mentioned, what is the interlocal agreement between the town of Grifton and Pitt County for administration of flood damage prevention ordinance? What does that mean?
So as I just explained, the planning department was responsible for administering the flood damage prevention ordinance for all of Grifton. Grifton is a unique town in that it spans both Pitt County and Lenoir County. We were approached by the town who asked for an amendment to our agreement to only do the flood damage prevention for the portion of the town located in Pitt County and let Lenoir County handle the portion of the town located within Lenoir County. So we agreed to amend our agreement and just do the portion of Grifton located in Pitt County.
How's that working out for us? Based on what we've heard tonight from Belvoir, listen, I can remember when.
Pretty
Grifton had
well.
some issues.
I think it was prompted by some concerns from the Lenoir County residents who had to drive to Greenville to get permits versus driving to Kinston. So.
Makes sense.
Right.
Yep.
Do I have a motion to adjourn, folks?
A second.
Adjourn.